in a way that I think will be a nice completion to the tone we set earlier with Jennifer's playing the fiddle, and with Jed's poem, with Dena's reading of the Barefooted Brigade story, and Jed's poem. And so I now want to introduce, for another original poem, Tori Riley. Tori?
Hello, Chuck. Thank you for inviting me today. I will just finish this off, I guess. And we hadn't talked much beforehand, so it's really pleasing to me how we've all been on the same wavelength without saying anything out loud. When I listened to the conversation ahead of time, it was like, my poem works. It's what these people are doing, and that's always a nice feeling. So I titled my poem for today, Mrs. Meyer's Prayers. "I'll be fine, Ma," the child man said, jutting out his chin just like his pa, signaling, "Don't argue with me. Me and Henry and John, we're going to go fight the Rebs. Put them down, save the Union. Like Mr. Mills said, we can't miss this adventure. We can't be the only ones not to go." He looked at his mother's anxious face. "It won't take long, Ma. We'll be home soon." So Mrs. Myers stood with the other mothers of Rippey, watching her sons march off to war, beating a drum their pa had made. She swallowed the fear in her throat, praying to God they'd be safe. Mr. Mills was wrong. The man boys weren't back soon. Mrs. Myers, with the other mothers and wives of Rippey, waited for news, feared the news, and prayed to God their soldiers were safe. Word of Company E, 39th Iowa Army Group, was eagerly awaited, anxiously feared. Mrs. Myers was one of the lucky ones. Occasional letters told her Joe, Henry, and John were alive. She tucked the letters in a drawer, her worry in her apron pocket, and prayed to God they'd be safe. Other women received dreaded words. Director Isaac Brown killed while commanding his company. 2 man boys killed in battle. 2 others dead at Andersonville Prison. 5 dead of disease. Another made it home before dying of a war-related ailment, perhaps self-inflicted. With each bit of news, Mrs. Myers prayed to God her sons were well. Months passed. News of the surrender at Appomattox got to Rippey weeks ahead of the schoolboys, now men. Mrs. Myers sensed her sons were near before seeing them. There in the yard were 3 men with whiskered faces, gaunt, exhausted, not the boys who proudly marched off years earlier. She let out a long exhale, the first since they'd left. "Joe, Henry, John," she said, "dinner's almost ready. Wash your hands and we'll eat." They went to the pump. Mrs. Myers shed hot, silent tears, took another deep breath, prayed to God in thanksgiving, and set 3 more plates on the table.
Mrs. Myers' Prayers. Fantastic, Tori, thank you. We're going to close with an appropriate hymn, and then we will take questions from any of you in the audience for about 10 minutes if you want to go that long, and you can address these to any of us who are involved in this today, and then we'll break, and you can enjoy the desserts that are back there today, and did we eat all the hardtack, Jeff? I think maybe we did. That's probably the first time in his Civil War history that's happened. Must be good hardtack.
If you have any uneven tables, they work really good for those also.
Yeah, Dave says that wasn't 30 years old. Like the hardtack the Civil War veterans or soldiers ate. So Jennifer Powers, lead us in an important musical message. Jennifer Carter. Thank you all for your patience, but questions? Anybody have any questions about any among us on the committee? Yeah, Roger.
So I know there's a couple battles mentioned from different people. Did the whole, I'm going to say, troop, the whole night, whatever, did they all stay together the whole war? Do you have any information about that?
They barely stayed together out of Iowa, is my understanding, but Dave, can you enlighten us on that?
Well, they all, when they marched up in Greene County, we had the 22nd Iowa, was followed up after that, and then a lot of other ones from Greene County joined other units. But some of them, when they get in there, when the company gets decimated, they will bring them in and put them in with a consolidated group. So some of them went into the 7th Iowa and different companies and stuff. But some of them did, from beginning to end, stay together and fought together.
We have different reports. I've read that they marched from here to Des Moines. I've read they marched to Davenport. And
For infantry,
they were infantry, Dave says, so they marched everywhere, so. Rick?
Back then, attendance at school was spotty. You know, there'd be some that would come for a few weeks and then drop out. Not very many of them had perfect attendance. Do you know if there were other, maybe part-time kids that did not go?
I'm sure. Diane, have you seen any reference to that?
I know that the school was still going,
Off and on, wasn't it?
off and on, yes.
Taught by another instructor.
After the Brand School opened, then another school opened similar to it in Jefferson, like in 1858. And then the Brand School closed, and was closed, do we know how long? Probably a couple of years or something in that range, and then it sort of opened for a while. And but again, it's interesting to think about that. Greene County was so new, we didn't even have a county government structure set up, and yet we were somehow operating. I don't know how they did it.
What was the age span of the soldiers?
The age span of the soldiers. Dave Burkett. I think this is where you tell the story about whether anybody underage was enlisted. Stand up.
Okay, now, when the war broke out, like every war that you have,
I'm going to hold this.
like every war that's there, it's exciting, it's something new, we've never done it before, so everybody wants to join. We had soldiers that came down from Canada, came from Germany and Ireland, and so they all came over just to have something that they've never seen. So there's an officer, when he wanted to raise a company, he needed 100 soldiers to make that company. And so he would take anybody that could walk. Major Offenburger here was the surgeon, so he'd have to check them out and make sure that they could walk and talk and do that kind of stuff.
They were all qualified.
But the age for enlistment was 18 to, we had soldiers from this town that were 45. And they would go through, they wouldn't be put in combat, but they would maybe POW camps, or they would do other work for them. But say officer up there and this young kid comes up and he's 15 and he's got to join. His brothers are going, he's going. And so what do I got to do? And, well, you know, the officer's going to go, no, you're too young, we're not going to take you, but then he's really the man. And so, but back then, religion was a big thing. You didn't lie, you didn't cheat, you didn't play cards, you didn't drink. You weren't supposed to do all that kind of stuff. But this kid really wanted to join. And so he would take a piece of paper and he would write the number 18, which was the enlistment age. And he'd stick it in his shoe and he'd put his foot on it and he'd be standing there. Now, the officer is not going to ask you, how old are you? He's not going to ask when you were born. He's going to ask you, are you over 18? Yes. Congratulations, you're a member of the 10th, 39th, Naval Regiment. So you are now
Amazing. Jim?
Did the enlistment period last 3 months? If not, what was it? And how much did enlisted men make?
Good question. You got that, Dave?
Okay, the enlisted man, $13 a month. Now, he had to pay for some of his uniform, the rifle that he got, he was responsible for, so if he lost it, he had to pay for it. Okay, unfortunately, the Confederacy, they didn't want you to get a paycheck, so they would steal your stuff, so sometimes you wouldn't see a paycheck for 3 months. And some of the guys, wanted to get that home because their wives were running the farms and doing that kind of stuff. But the 3 month enlistment, that's all the President Lincoln called for was 3 months because that's all it was going to last for. Governor Kirkwood of Iowa knew that that wasn't going to be it. It's going to be longer than that, so they're going to have to be 3-year enlistment. And that's what a lot of the other states went to. And then after the first Battle of Bull Run, they knew that it was going to be longer than 3 months, so they extended those to the states for 2 more years. So.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Chuck, I would
Yeah, Dave.
say that give a plug to Ken Burns for his Civil War series. We've watched it several times, but if you haven't ever seen it and you're interested in the Civil War, he does a marvelous job with chronicling that Civil War.
He certainly does. Ken Burns, and maybe many of you have seen in the past week, he's been doing the American Revolution. Is that completed now?
Yes.
But it's available, you can download it on YouTube, online at Iowa Public,
It's running.
Iowa PBS.
It's running all day right now.
Oh, it is. The whole thing's running all day. Wow, amazing. Yeah, he does fantastic work. So,
You've seen the Iowa soldiers. We had a lot more soldiers from Greene County. We had New Jefferson and Rippey and just Greene County, New Greene County. And I'm in the process of documenting. And you go to the courthouse and you can look at that wall and it's in little tiny words, you can see the names. I'm documenting the regiments that they went with and who, and in some cases, if you have a relative that's on that wall and you want to know more information, you can contact the Historical Society, they know how to get a hold of me, and I can get you more information on that soldier as well. So.
our current Veterans Affairs Director, and I can't remember her name, Billy something. Billy Davis. She told me that she did a quick search as best she could on short order, and she said there are 456 Civil War veterans buried in Greene County. And these would have been people from all over, everywhere, who eventually settled and died here, or died elsewhere and requested to be buried. So 456 Civil War veterans.
I live in Scranton, and I work at the cemetery out there. And 2/3 of the soldiers came from Illinois after the war. And so they came, they settled up in Rippey, here, whatever towns that they came to, and you can go to the cemetery. If you go to a cemetery and you see kind of a rounded top stone and it has a shield on it, that's one way to know that that was a Civil War veteran. So if you're ever walking through a cemetery and you see that shield, then you know that they served.
One more time, any donations are welcome anytime. If you want to consider a larger gift of $500 or more and want to designate it toward one of these specific projects, take a pledge card and think about it and then